Conversation with Nandi. Politique, histoire, religion, science, musique, civisme, technologie, éducation. C'est l'heure pour la mise en contexte de la rubrique,
And today we have an exclusive with Joan Jean-Joseph. Obviously, we are related. We're going to be talking about autism, and based on her expertise, she's going to tell us a little bit more so we can be aware in the community how we should think about it. Welcome, Joanne.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Tell us exactly who you are and what you do.
So I am a developmental evaluator. I have been working in this field for about 3 years. And what I do is I evaluate children between, anywhere between birth to age 3. And I look for certain developmental delays. One of those including that I look for are autism. So, I would say that, based on the 3 years that I've been doing this, I have definitely have an eye for what to look for if you are worried that you might be seeing early signs of autism in your children. So I definitely, that's what I do.
How early can that be detected in a child?
So I've seen early signs of autism as young as like 13 months.
Wow.
Yeah. Very, very early. It usually starts with just not really responding, or giving you the same attention back in return, And one of the big signs that I see are just how they play. Children who have early signs tend to play in a very repetitive manner. 13 months is very, very early, and usually I definitely don't encourage, such an early diagnosis at that age. But, for some children, I've seen it, and the signs were pretty strong. 13 months would be like the youngest I've ever seen, but, typically by like 15, 16 months, you can definitely, and that's still pretty early as well, you can definitely see really early signs that your child may be autistic.
Okay, now when you identifies a child at such an early age, how do you transfer that to the parent? Is there a special way to let them know the information? Usually when I conduct an evaluation, I always just start off by just really observing the child and having the parent do certain things and interact with the child. Very simple, like just calling your child's name. One of the big signs that I look for is a lack of response. Sometimes children who have early signs, they don't necessarily respond to their name consistently. Sometimes it's rare, some parents might see it as, oh, they're just ignoring, or they're busy, because, children, especially very young, they tend to not have very much attention, whatever they're playing with is what they're focused on, but, I usually ask them several times throughout the evaluation, call your child's name, call your name, raise your voice, to see what kind of response, the child gives. Simple commands, at an early age, just give me, like if a child's holding something and you ask, like, oh, can I have that, please, with a gesture to see if the child even follows. Just simple commands like that, like come here, or where's your ball, or where's your shoes, So their ability to follow commands is something that I look at very closely. And like I said before, just how they play. I've noticed that children with autism, they play in a very unique way. It's very repetitive. Sometimes they like the sound of things, so you'll see like a lot of tapping of things, shaking of toys. Sometimes they have, really strong repetitive behaviors like spinning wheels, not just wheels of toys, like wheels of strollers, their cars, anything. They tend to inspect their toys rather than play with them, just turning it, looking at it, Sometimes I see a lot of, when I mentioned spinning, some children tend to spin their bodies a lot, or they shake their heads or flap, hand flap. And it's not like, for a child to have signs, it's not just one thing, I can't, just because your child flaps their hands doesn't automatically mean they have autism, I usually look for multiple signs.
What do they start thinking there might be a possibility this thing exists in a child? Is it from the doctor's office or from school?
No, I mean, it's usually, to have your child evaluated, it could be recommended from a pediatrician. It could be as a parent yourself. You feel like, okay, something's going on. One other thing that I didn't get to mention was sometimes, a lot of children with autism, they start off being able to do things like respond to their name or, say mama, dada, and give you back that joint attention. And then sometimes it just stops, like as if like a switch kind of just flipped in their mind, and the personality that you once saw when they were a certain age just kind of like fades away, and we call this regression, social regression. So when parents see that, obviously they get very worried, and, that's when they kind of start the process of wanting to have their child evaluated, So, and evaluations are free, you just call 311, you can have your child evaluated, it doesn't cost you anything. I would come out as a developmental evaluator, take a look at your child. It only takes one evaluation. And, based on what I see, if it is signs of autism, the conversation that I have with parents is, very truthful, in what I see. I find that a lot of parents, they have no clue, like especially first-time parents, they don't realize that some of the behaviors their child is exhibiting are signs of autism. They think it's just like, oh, this is just what my child does, which it is what your child does. It's just that, they don't realize like, oh, these are signs of autism. So some parents, they kind of had the feeling already, and, I'm just there to kind of confirm it. However, I'm not diagnosing. The next step would be to have a psychologist evaluate the child, and then the psychologist can confirm or maybe rule out whether this is autism.
What are the common reactions you get from the parents?
I get a variety of reactions. I find some parents make a lot of excuses for their children's behavior. And, like for example, if the child's not responding to their name, they're just like, oh, he's busy, or like if a child responded to their name once, that counts in their mind, versus like, about 95% of the time the child didn't respond, but that one time counts for them as like, oh, everything's fine, So, some parents are, in denial, and they come up with excuses because, unfortunately, nobody wants to hear this news, that's just not a reality for most parents. This is not what some people want. Some parents, this was already a thought in their head, so me sharing news to them about what I see is nothing new. Some parents take it very hard, and then, I try to be as positive as possible, and just let them know, it's not a death sentence, it's just that your child learns things in a different way, and the possibility of your child still living a very normal, healthy, happy life, productive life, is still very possible, so it's a variety of responses.
But if I do the test, the diagnostic later in age, can that make a difference?
So some parents, and I usually would recommend this, like, because a lot of people feel like, to diagnose a child with autism at such a young age is too early, and in some cases I do agree, because some children, they they don't always respond because they are in fact busy. It doesn't necessarily mean that they're autistic. However, if the signs are very, clear, early detection is very, very, very vital, because, children who have autism, they learn things in a different way, They might not pick up on basic skills like being able to feed themselves with utensils, talking, as fast as typical children, So in order for them to achieve certain things like that, they have to start therapy at an early age, the earlier the better. And a lot of parents, because they just don't know, lack the knowledge necessary to help their children, So this is why we have, therapists all over the city who are experts in working with children with autism. So the earlier that you can have your child receive these, services, the better off they are, And, I think it's really important. The earlier, the better.
How heavy you think the responsibility is when a child most likely would develop that situation, that problem?
Yeah, I don't personally have, children who have with autism, right? But so for me to speak on this question that you asked, I'm not speaking from experience, However, I do know that, when a child is diagnosed with autism, it's a huge responsibility, but I mean, having a child who's not autistic is still a huge responsibility, I don't really see, they're both huge responsibility. Being a parent, period. It's just that life looks a little different for families with children who have autism. And it doesn't necessarily mean that it's harder, I think just overall life is hard. I mean, if you ask me now about my personal children, life is hard.
Correct.
So just because your child is autistic doesn't mean, my life is harder, it's all how you look at it, as a parent.
It's going to be a different discipline or different way to deal with them, but the outcome, it's not going to be like catastrophic as a lot of people are afraid, right?
Absolutely not. It doesn't. No. It's. I think for me personally, in my opinion, I think it's just a mind shift for a lot of parents. Because when you have children, sometimes we have in our mind how we expect children to be raised and how they're going to react and grow and develop, and with children with autism, you pretty much have to learn your child, right? Children with autism, their world is very unique, and you have the job and task of learning what their world is.
Okay, there's something I've witnessed before. I've witnessed a school bus that dropping off a kid to school, autistic children. I've noticed that almost every one of them has a special teacher. Can you elaborate on that for me? Tell me why you think that's the case?
Like every child who's autistic has different unique needs. And sometimes, I mean, there's some autistic children who are in a regular classroom with maybe 25 students and one teacher, So every case is different. Every case is unique. If a child has a one-to-one teacher, they might not. And when you say teacher, there's also teacher assistants, paraprofessionals, who are just there to assist the child, in any way. What kind of life their child is going to live. Will they be able to have a relationship, get married one day, and these are things that parents hope for and wish for in their children. And, I would definitely say all that is still very possible, with a child with autism, The most important thing is, with early detection, you pour into that child, as much as you can, and you have to get rid of your expectations, for this child. Your child is going to live the life that they're going to live, and what you might expect of them or what might make you happy, like, oh, I'd be happy to see my child get married and have a family. it's not what you want, it's what your child wants, and it's what makes your child happy, So with children with autism, it's not about you and what you want. It's their life and what makes them happy. And, at the end of the day, as parents, all we want is our children to be happy.
Tell me about the possibilities that a child with autism can have a normal life, in your opinion.
The possibility is endless. Like I said, it's definitely dependent on I think the family that a child with autism is cared for by. How much effort and work a family puts into a child with autism. There are a lot of famous people who exist who you might not know who have autism. And they've been able to live a very successful, productive life. If I might mention this show that I absolutely love on Netflix, it's called Love on the Spectrum. They follow, people, real people, who some of them are autistic, and, they were able to find love and, be in very healthy and happy relationships, and it's very heartwarming to watch. So, I would advise, families to definitely just do some research, and just see, that there is a lot of resources out there, a lot of families who are going through the same thing, where you can find support, and you'll see and you'll realize that, autism is not a barrier at all, it's just people who have autism, they just do things differently. That's it. They're very unique.
So is it something that a parent should just make some adjustment in life, in your opinion?
Yeah, it's definitely an adjustment. I'm not going to say that there won't be any challenges. But like I said, sometimes you have families with children who don't have autism, and it's still very challenging.
That's a good point.
Right, challenges don't only exist in families with autism. They exist in families with typical children too, So, it's all how you choose to look at it,
For some reason in our community, or some communities I should say, they have a tendency to hide, they don't want to share this information with other people. Even in casual conversation, it's something they want to hide, or they're just a little ashamed to say it. What advice would you give them?
I would definitely say that they are not alone, and if you feel like this is just something that you're maybe embarrassed about or ashamed of, or you don't know how to even be with this information, you're not the only one. There's definitely a lot of support groups out there and families who are pretty much going through the same thing that you're going through. You're not alone, and it's not a death sentence. I can't stress that enough. And I've even heard some families say that their children who are autistic, they make life more interesting.
Yeah.
So it's every situation is unique.
Uh-huh.
I wouldn't spend too much time worrying about the future and the what ifs, and I would just definitely try to just focus on the moment, focus on what you can control at the very moment. Learn your child who's autistic, learn what they like. I can definitely speak about different things that I noticed with autistic children, their strengths, and use that to your advantage, to make life happier and more peaceful for everyone.
Okay, as far as the support group, are they everywhere, or for a parent that needs to get the help with a child, what are they out there?
Well, I don't personally know specifically what support groups exist, but I do know they exist. With my agency, we do. If you just let the agency know that you would like to find out more information about, just autism, and what other resources are out there, they definitely will support you with that. And then some children with autism, they might need a smaller classroom, to help them succeed. So it depends on the child.
Let's say someone is 18, 19, 20, but they've never been diagnosed with such a condition because of where they come from.
There's a lot of people who have been diagnosed with autism very late in life, and sometimes, they spent majority of their life wondering, like, why do I do things this way, right? Or why do certain things have to be a certain way, with me, and then they realize late in life that, oh, wait, I have autism. So it kind of helps to explain things, definitely think, I know for sure that, people are diagnosed late in life with autism. And
oh, wow.
Yeah.
So they've been living like a normal life. No one can notice that they have it. And then when they go for testing, they diagnose with that problem.
Right. They might go to the doctor and they say, they might, speak to the doctor about something that just bothers them in particular, or maybe they might have noticed that they just maybe struggled in certain areas of their life, social areas maybe, like socially. And, they realize, after speaking with the doctor and maybe other specialists, that they actually, in fact, had some form of autism. Kind of just be wondering within themselves, and then, of course, speak to somebody about it. I've even, I'm not sure, there is an online diagnostic test. I remember my coworker, she took it, where they ask you a series of questions, and then they kind of, let you know, oh, you might actually have signs of a form of autism, or it might just be some sort of ADHD or something. So I've seen that online, It's not diagnosing you, but it might help you think about certain things that you've never thought about before about yourself, like some people don't like to be around people, socially, being around people bothers them, and they probably never understood why. And come to find out, it's a form of autism.
So some of us here can be living with a form of that problem that we don't even know that's what it is.
Yeah, that my coworker, she came to me and she's like, you should take this test. She's like, I just found out I think I have some sort of form of autism.
If you're
based on how
60
she
years old,
answered the question.
So if I'm 60 years old and it's probably too late right now to worry about that.
No, I mean, if you've been able to live your life to 60 and be productive, I don't think finding out that you actually had autism would change anything.
What if my wife has been telling me something is wrong with you because...
Now you have an explanation. So there's no more wondering what's wrong. Now you have an explanation.
Do you think the region where someone come from may have something to do with this?
No. A lot of people wonder, what are the causes? Mm-hmm. It's not something that's tied to a specific region. There's really no true explanation as to what causes autism. I mean, there's a lot of theories out there. However, I know one theory is, if you have children later in life, but, I've seen children who come from, young parents who have autism. So it's not specific. Or I've even heard it being connected to certain medications or vaccines that a child may have taken, and it's just, there's just not enough evidence or research to prove that to be true, so, because it doesn't discriminate. It affects anybody, any ethnicity, any race, anybody.
Florida is one of the places where they have the highest one, and Texas has the lowest one. Any particular, in your opinion, what do you think that can be the cause of that?
So, in my opinion, I think that it can all just lead back to early detection, Some states might promote early detection more than others, which would lead to more children being diagnosed, versus in other places, and I'm just even thinking just outside of the United States, early intervention is not necessarily a thing in other countries, you know.
Correct.
So as far as from state to state, you know, my best thought for that would be, you know, just early detection and, you know, knowledge and how available is this information to the community, you know, because like I said, there's some parents who just have no clue.
Let's say someone wants to have a family or a couple. Do they have any reason why they should even think about that, or they need to learn about it just in case?
Well, I think just in general, learning about, you know, any type of disorder, you know, is important, you know, especially like with families who are thinking about having children, you know, it's important to know because this might affect you, you know. I don't think it should stop anyone, you know, from having a family. But, you know, I think, you know, a lot of times, you know, this is why you visit the pediatrician as often as you do with your young ones, your children, your babies, because, you know, sometimes you don't know.
Okay.
And a pediatrician can pick up in the visit whether something might not be right, you know, and they sometimes often make the recommendation for the families to have their children evaluated.
Do you think someone may have to travel far for some kind of help if they need?
Well, I think in the United States, you pretty much can find early intervention support, you know, in every state, you know. Now, if you are in another country, that might look different. It might not exist. It may exist exactly like the United States, you know. So, you know, it's really hard for me to tell. But I know that in the United States, definitely, we do have the resources to provide to families who might have children with autism, you know. And, you know, with therapists, you know, there's lots of therapists, you know. There's people in college who are graduating, you know, and this is the field that they're studying, you know. So, you know, we always have a lot of therapists, you know, and I think it's really important that families, you know, just find therapists that best fit the needs of their children, you know, which I think that might be a challenge for some families, you know, like when they go through the process and they have to now pair their child with a therapist, you know, that becomes the challenge sometimes. But definitely, you know, just extreme patience, you know, learn as much as you can as a parent, because you don't necessarily want to just rely on therapists to do everything. You know, as a parent, you are there 24/7. You can essentially become your child's therapist, you know. So there's definitely a lot that you can learn, even just on the internet, on how you can help your children, and you can provide that service to your children
But
along with
if
therapy.
you do not know much about it, is there any special training for parents that receive the news and how to cope with it and what they can do to minimize the stress?
Yeah, there's definitely, you know, a lot of information out there. Just, you know, certain agencies, if you have your child evaluated with an agency, you can ask the agency, you know, they have plenty of resources to help you cope, help you learn. And again, you know, you're not the only family out there with, I've even seen on social media, you know, like if you are, you know, everyone's on Facebook and Instagram, there are support groups that you can join on Facebook. I actually, on Instagram, there is a mother who I follow, and she has 2 children with autism. And I mean, what she does daily is just phenomenal. And she provides so much tips on how to, you know, help her children, different activities that she takes her children to, you know. So like I said, there's resources everywhere that you just gotta look.
Do you think it's a reason not to consider having another child?
No,
So,
absolutely not.
If it can be genetic, so why shouldn't there be another reason in your opinion?
Well, we don't know if it's genetic, so, you know, it's not a reason to not have more children if more children is what you desire. You know, like I said, it's not something you can prevent. It's not something that you can change if that's the outcome. It's just it's just something that happens. If you look at statistics, it's not something that happens often. So that might be helpful in easing the stress of maybe the fear.
Okay.
But
Well, usually people, they fear of the unknown. Is it because they don't know much about it that would make them probably react in such a way?
I think that autism, I think the fear has come from just maybe different experiences, or they've seen children with autism, and it might look unusual to them, because they're just not used to seeing what certain children with autism, how they act, or how they behave as well, I think there's also a stigma where, if you have a child with autism, they're not going to be able to do certain things, and they're not going to be able to participate in certain things. And it's just not true.
Joanne, obviously, we've been dealing with this problem. Society has been dealing with this problem for such a long time, and for some reason, it seems that parents they are still uncomfortable dealing with this situation. So how can you really assure them to not really think about this as a major issue?
So the main thing is to first accept that this is your reality, and then to also just let go of any ideas of, or especially the stereotypes that come along with, autism, because, especially the negative ones especially, because it's just not true, and the faster that you realize that, autism is not a death sentence, and that your child can have a very productive, healthy, happy life, and you pour into your child, and you give them everything that you can, and you provide them with, all the support that they need, and you help them learn things in their world, the way that they learn, and you learn your child and what they like. And once you are able to kind of get that in order, you'll see that, having a child with autism can actually be a really wonderful experience, and it's not this negative cloud that you have to be embarrassed about, or that you have to, hide from. You'll also realize that you're not alone. There's plenty of families who, have children with autism, and, this is not just a horrible thing. Like, this can actually be a very positive light in your life.
You could turn it into a positive, as you said.
It is. It absolutely is. There's nothing wrong with your child. Your child is just unique. They learn things different, They don't, children with autism typically don't learn things in the way that typical children do, So it's more so like you have to kind of like discover this, It's like a secret that you have to discover. What is your child like,
So basically, if I may say, it's not a learning disorder, in other words.
I wouldn't say it's a learning disorder. Some children who have autism, they do have a hard time learning things. It might just take them a little longer, but you will also see that there's children with autism who excel in other areas, where it takes them no time to learn certain things and certain skills, So it's not necessarily a learning disability, Like me, I might be great in school and learning how to read and write. However, it takes me a long time to learn how to paint, where it might be just the opposite for a child with autism, like they probably can paint beautiful murals with no effort, but reading and writing would be a challenge, So that's why I say with children with autism, They're just unique, and you have to learn what their strengths are.
So do they let you know first this is a particular child that has this kind of problem, and how do you interact with them with the normal children? I mean, with the kids that have that don't have the problem.
So I have never personally, like, because I teach general education. I teach sixth grade. I've only encountered children who I've thought might be on the spectrum, based on certain behaviors that I saw, but it was never like a diagnosis that I knew about beforehand, In my school, the special education classes, which the most restrictive one would be like a 12-to-1 class, where there's 12 students and one teacher and maybe some paraprofessionals to help. There are autistic children within that class, but like I said, it depends on each individual child. Like I said, I've seen children who may have never been diagnosed, and these are probably the people who find out that they have autism when they're adults, But I've seen children in sixth grade where I'm like, I think that child. There's a wide range with autism. Obviously everyone's goal is to ensure that the child is in the best place that they can succeed, right? So it's not just a parent's decision alone. I think it's a team decision with, parent, teachers, special educators, people who are experts in the field of autism. It's not a decision that a parent has to make on their own, So if that's something that a parent is fearful of, you're not alone, especially once your child becomes school age, there's definitely a lot of people who are going to guide you and help you to kind of understand where your child is going to succeed at in school. As far as their future, I think as they get older, you will kind of see what your child excels at, and then, when it comes to like college and careers, some people who have autism, they're able to have careers doing a various amount of things, and then I think it's again, I think it's the same for typical people, like obviously you find your strengths and you find what you are passionate about, what you are good at, and that's where you kind of pursue your higher education or pursue your career in, So it's the same thing with autistic children. It's nothing different.
So basically, when you look at a lot of famous people, I didn't even know myself. When I see some of the names of famous people out there that anybody can Google, it's a surprise to me to realize these people you would never even imagine that they had to deal with this problem at some time in their lives.
Yeah, if I could just interject, I when I was looking at the amount of famous people who were diagnosed with autism, I can't help but to think that could it possibly be that their autism kind of helped them achieve the success, that they were able to achieve, because with autistic people, they kind of do things in a very unique way, and some of them are very disciplined in certain things, which kind of helped them to kind of achieve that level of success, like it's almost like their autism is like a superpower.
Exactly. So you could argue, because obviously there must have been something really good in their lives to reach such a plateau of success, having to deal with this problem.
Yeah, absolutely,
So we're not going to even call it a problem, in your opinion. Would you agree with me?
Yeah, no, you should.
It's just a little challenge.
No, just a uniqueness.
So, Joanne, we I know the time is getting really close to us here too, and any specific recommendation would you give all parents when it comes to this?
I guess what kind of lingers in my mind when I think about autism is, a lot of parents go through the various stages of like, why me? Why did this happen to me? And I think it's very important to realize that autism is not a negative thing that's happening to you, and I keep going back to the same reference, because you have families who don't have children with autism, and they still, with their typical children, are going through horrific things, like how many families out there have children who are drug addicts?
Correct.
Or children who are suffering from certain mental disorders,
Correct.
depression, suicide. I can't sit here and say, oh, this is worse than that, or what would you rather, this or that, but like you need to also just realize, like, having a child with autism could be a wonderful thing, just like, and there are some families who don't have children with autism, and they're still going through so many challenges that, would probably keep you up at night and give you nightmares, and it has nothing to do with autism, so autism is not a death sentence. It's not a negative thing. It's just that your life is just going to be a little different. And if you choose to think about it in a positive way, it could be different in a positive way.
Thank you, Joanne. But in our community, I know some people, for some reason, the unknown, they always think of negative of the unknown. So just to reinforce what Joanne just told us, it's nothing really negative to think about. It's not a spell. It's not like someone is doing something bad after you, or your child come out with this little condition that you have to deal with. And we really have to really look at a different approach, as Joanne just said here. And Joanne, honestly, do you have any last word would you like to tell the public when it comes to this?
I would just say, do your research, ask questions, ask for help if you need help, because there is help out there. Sometimes, if someone doesn't ask you if you need help, you might have to be the one who asks for help, which is fine. And just know that, having a child with autism is not a bad thing. It's just life is different, and in many cases, life is better sometimes.
Okay. So those of us who do not know about it, we might need to learn more so we can adjust to them to make life a little easier on them.
Yeah, it's just an adjustment.
So it's nothing to fear for.
No, and I don't think it's not necessarily any different from when you have families with typical children, so all families with children alone, whether they are autistic or not, have challenges, so.
Joanne, we're going to have to cut this off. Is there going to be another time we're going to see you in the studio?
Yeah, anytime you guys want me back, I'm happy to speak.
Okay, hopefully next time we're going to bring you back again, maybe for a different subject as an educator. It's been a pleasure for all the audience that are listening to conversation with Nandi today. And hopefully next time Nandi will be back with you guys. And I want to wish you once again a happy Easter and have a good weekend.
Haïtiens rassemblés pas d'une part.